Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Welcome back to the Think Small podcast. My guest today is Matt Zucker with Profit. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. Thanks for the time today, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Oh, great to be here.
So I always like to start these by just kind of going into a brief history about what the company does and how you guys got the start and what the sort of core competency, right? Like what is Profit all about?
That's a great. You should asking a marketing person. I should be able to answer that. So, Profit is a global strategy and creative firm. We have a bunch of different capabilities, all kind of organized around helping clients unlock what we call uncommon growth. So, different kinds of growth, whether it's exponential growth, sustainable growth, actionable growth, like really not just optimizing your way there, but like really thinking kind of big and kind of finding it sometimes an alternate route to that space, that kind of a elusive goal, especially in times like this. I think the capabilities that we bring to it are a really strong depth in brand and brand strategy, in marketing and marketing strategy, in experience and innovation, and then really importantly, organization and culture. And, I think we really find that to do anything interesting for a customer, you're really also helping companies on the inside kind of unlock that culture change or that adoption or that kind of shift.
I always find that marketing is interesting because it's like it's where science meets art, right? It's like, all right, let's design something, but there's almost always some kind of like decision about how our brains work, and you get like almost have to have like an art degree, psychology degree, and then the analytics side as well. Can you talk to me about what Profit's approach to analyzing data and creating an actionable marketing is like?
Yeah, I would agree with that take. I mean, I went into advertising because it was this intersection of business and the arts, right? Like I wanted to be a writer, but I wanted to be a businessman too. So I agree with that kind of intersection. And I think the way Profit and a lot of firms that understand is, you start with a customer, and so there is the science, but you're kind of looking at what the needs are, what the customer is looking for, what the market needs, sometimes what the opportunity could be. And I think you're synthesizing from what's possible and what you can see. And what you can see is often very data driven. So you can be super scientific about it. You can be hypothesis led and intuitive and validate it. But I think there is also an art about it. And it's going to start with like a really interesting insight. And an insight isn't something you can just get. You really have to use data or behaviors or observation to be able to glean from that. And from that, you find a good problem set, and you find an opportunity in some space. And then you can use math and a little bit of art about how to best execute against that.
I think one of the things that we talked about on our sort of prep call was around like almost like blind brand loyalty, right? Like consumers get into like they almost like you have this emotional connection to a product. And can you talk to me about what that's like generating a brand strategy for an enterprise company? Like the one thing that pops into my head is like people that have like unwavering loyalty to like FedEx, and they're just like, I just like the way the trucks look, like they still get your package from point A to point B, no problem, right? Regardless of who you use. It's just we build up these brands in our mind and we create emotional relationships with them, even though they're ultimately just entities that are servicing, us, right?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways brands are built with messages and story and art, but they're also built with experience. So I would disagree that I think that person that loves FedEx also loves the experience, and any break in that experience is going to damage no matter how good the trucks look. On the other hand, you're also attracted to a brand that's strong, that seems confident, that tells the story, and you can see yourselves in. And I think that's changed a little bit over time, over the decades and with the generations. But yeah, I think you're buying a story too. I mean, the way we build brands is often the starting point. There is a little bit of a narrative. There is the brand. I mean, the framework we use, and people have their own version of this, is purpose, promise, and principles. And there's the brand purpose, why you exist as a brand. Why is FedEx in the universe at all? Like, why is it there? The promise is a little more specific, and that's at the audience itself, at your friend who likes FedEx, what they promise him or her, like what they're offering the market. And then the principles are how they deliver it. and what's interesting about the way they do it. And it might be the brand experience, the way they dress. I think about the UPS guy, not the FedEx guy, like all dressed in brown, like it's really interesting, right? And or the way their on-time promise or the guarantee. So principles get a little more specific in the how, and those three layers really kind of create a brand strategy. But it has to be delivered through an experience time after time after time. And, the deeper that bond, the more permission you have to make a mistake and how to step back and any gaps in that create opportunity for another brand to kind of step in and grab a bit of it. But, it can get more specific with different groups, a brand might have an overall strategy, but then different types of people or customers, it might have a slightly different variation in what it actually offers, him or her or them.
It's funny because my mind, when you said about sort of like service and that sort of expectation of an experience that you're getting, right? My mind goes to, because my background prior to being an employee benefits broker, prior to working for a PEO, was in telecom. I worked for Sprint, and then Sprint was acquired by T-Mobile, and T-Mobile had this major brand, growth, right? And they took over as the leading network provider in the country, I think, and they have this movement, the uncarrier movement, and people love it. They look at.
Wait, we did that.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's really funny they use that as example. So listeners, this was not staged, but Profit built the uncarrier strategy. And
no way.
Yeah, and it's a great story. It's actually a reason why what attracted me to the company 12 years ago was being able to do provocative, interesting market shifts like that. And yes, T-Mobile went from like a number 4, and it was stuck in a really tough place. It was after the AT&T merger was called off, and they got a boatload of money, but they really had to do something with it or they're going to go out of business. And they were getting pressure from the big ones and from the little ones, and they had to do something really interesting to survive. And so the uncarrier strategy was something that Profit developed with the board of T-Mobile. And there was many strategies. This was the chosen one. And we had to build a business case for it, was to really rip up those contracts and do a whole series beyond the contracts of interesting moves, signature moves that would embody being different than the rest of the pack. And it worked. Yes, T-Mobile kind of grew into the big number 3. It helped acquire Sprint, and it's become a really interesting dynamic force. And it's one of our favorite stories because it's a real challenger, not just a survival story, but a thrive story.
You know what? What's interesting about that is that not only from a consumer experience did that uncarrier movement, within T-Mobile kind of take place, but also from the employee perspective, it was a full culture shift, right? Like we were coming from these, hey, like, oh, I'll send you this DocuSign. You're in an 18-month contract or 24-month contract or whatever. And then when it kind of came down to it, it was like, even from the employee experience, it's like we had to embody that sort of uncarrier. We are the uncarrier. And, kind of changing how we approached closing business. So I was on the business team. So I was like, we went from, suit and tie and carrying a bag to jeans and T-shirts and kind of this, changing what your mindset was around, business relationship within telecom.
Yeah, and from what I remember, I think the employee training went first. That was the first thing to happen before the external market through different agencies and so forth. A lot of people were participating in it, but the employee training and retraining went first to turn all of you into huge advocates and to embody this new philosophy, which was pretty disruptive.
And then kind of doubling back to what you said around service and brand loyalty and how it kind of falls off. I felt like Verizon had that leading. They were technologically advanced. They were, ahead of the curve on everything. And you had that brand loyalty with Verizon, right? Can you hear me now? And then as T-Mobile grew and expanded their network and merged with their technologies with Sprint, like Verizon kind of fell off, and a lot of the loyalty kind of tapered, right? It was like, okay, my service experience has fallen off, and now I'm moving over to a different, more readily available provider. So yeah, I agree with you 100% on how a brand can have, they give a lot of leash when it comes to loyalty because you're attached to that brand, but once service kind of falls off, it's anybody's game, I guess.
Yeah, and I think one thing I've learned as a marketer since I started as a copywriter, so I always thought the story was the most important thing, and I think it is really important. The foundational, like, what's your story of value, what's interesting about you. So I think brand building, like, that's very true, and I think experience that we've all learned can make or break a brand and stuff. What I didn't realize until much later, and maybe it's also by marketing a professional services firm, is that the experience, how you work, can be a growth engine. Like, you can, like, actually, that could be really interesting. Sometimes what you stand for and your positioning, like, you can't always make that different. Sometimes you can make it a little bit different, but you can't, it can't always be completely different than everybody else. But the way in which you deliver those principles, and how you work, and how you serve, actually could be sometimes a growth driver too. Not just avoiding a bad thing, but it could be a very, very, very positive thing.
I just had a law firm on that's grown from just 2 employees, 2 partners, right, to 30 employees, right? And that's core small business, right? 30 employees, probably right around the end of, small, right? Before they start teetering into the medium size, right? And his main concern with growth and expansion was around maintaining the identity of the firm, right? They set out to be a small business sort of white glove legal arm, right? Like outsourced legal counsel, and providing, like, I'm going to be sending text messages and just a phone call away to small businesses that are wearing, business owners that are wearing a ton of different hats. So as he grows, he didn't want to lose that identity. Is there anything you can kind of talk to about maintaining an organizational identity as companies scale towards, middle and enterprise level spaces?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's why you kind of need the we have this whole practice area around organizational change and change alignment. And I mean, I think, you've got to have kind of some guidelines and some principles about how you behave, and they can't just be these general things like we're good people. You've got to really build it into the kind of talent you want to attract, what you reinforce. So some of the lessons I think I've learned from our own growth, we've grown quite a bit over the last couple of years, and we just acquired a firm in Europe, so we're getting a little bigger. So we'll go through this again, right? How do we? And we think they're our people, right? Like, we have some similarities. So you're starting from a place of growth where you feel like you've attracted the right folks, but how do you sustain that? So I think some of it is how you celebrate. I think it comes from the CEO, what he, in his regular communication, both live and written, he's very consistent about what he celebrates and what he reinforces. I think it's what the firm says no to, like what we don't pursue. I think it's how you treat specific people and who you elevate and how you honor. So it very much starts at the top, because I think culture can be very driven. And then it's also how you incentivize. I think keeping the commitments are really the consistency. What I really admire, I started in advertising, and it was like reviews and things, like, they sort of happened, but they didn't really happen on time. Like, in all the agencies I worked with, we never really treated reviews and feedback seriously. And when I moved into consulting, into profit, I was really impressed with how twice a year, we're doing the formal feedback sessions. We are encouraged to do regular feedback and have a culture of it, point these things out. We're constantly doing sensing. So I think as an organization, you need to stay aware, not anecdotally, but from a data point of view. So for example, having that kind of monthly pulse or quarterly pulse that people answer, and with a degree of anonymity, so you get some authentic answers, and then diving into it and taking it seriously. So I think the culture change happens from the top. I think you have to have the mechanisms built along the way, and then you need to be able to sense what is happening to see if you're off course. Because if you start to drift, you could drift. It happens, right? It wouldn't be unnatural, especially as a market changes or something new happens in the business. But you need to be able to be aware of it so you can pivot a little bit.
It's funny. I recently had senior HR manager for Eli Lilly on, and she was recently promoted to the country manager for Bulgaria, and she's a fascinating person. But it's so interesting how even an enterprise organization of 60,000 global employees and profit of, I don't know, 4 or 5. You're what?
We're like 600 people,
right?
In about 15 offices.
And then this law firm of 30 people. They all have very similar HR goals and sort of expectations, right, around culture and how do we create a cohesive environment so everyone is on the same page. Our mission, vision, value, all align. That brand is embraced by the employee, so that way it's translated to the client or to the customer, right? It's so interesting how even at that truly like global enterprise level, and then to the core mid-market and to the small business, it's all the same thing. It's just different scale.
Yeah. And I mean, repetition really matters. And we know this with customers, right? You need to repeat the message again and again and again. And maybe you think it's already been said, but people need to hear things 6 or 7 times before they notice it, or maybe they start to kind of believe it. So you need some repetition also internally. And then of course, there's one framework we've used where it's kind of like hear it, believe it, live it, and everything doesn't happen at the same pace. So you do have to go a little bit deeper and deeper in order for people to adopt a value. Just hearing it at a town hall or something isn't necessarily enough. It's the beginning, but you need some repetition and some depth.
So with this new acquisition for a profit and expanding the company, it sounds like you have a lot of different near-term goals. I'm wondering where the company is going in the next 3 to 5 years, if you can kind of share about some of the near-term goals.
I think as the market changes and as, we all change as professionals. And of course, AI has been, I guess for us, it's been a big unlock, it rather than like a threat. So we have really 2 big types of customers that we want to continue to serve. One has been our kind of customer for a very, very long time, and that's the CMO or the marketing leader, the brand or marketing leader. Profit was built as a brand strategy firm. Like we have really deep roots in that space in marketing, and so I think our objective there is to expand our offerings and how we can serve the marketing leader. So not just from, we're like a full service agency now, so end to end. So it's really, but they may not all know that. So one of our objectives is to kind of share more of what we can do for them and go deeper and meet their needs. And they might have other evolving needs that we can meet. And that's from insights to all the way into in market. We're one of the few brand strategy firms that go all the way into market. We buy and plan media for clients. I mean, we're really unusual in that space too. And then the second major customer, which really is many customers, is kind of the business leader, is the CEO of a mid-market company or large enterprise, or the general manager or the division head. So this is more of someone that appreciates brand and marketing and might have it in their purview, but also has business strategy needs, growth needs that may be outside the marketing realm. Culture, they might have culture challenges for AI adoption or what their roadmap should be. And that was one of our objectives, is to let those folks know that we exist and what we offer to the table and how we do it differently than, say, the management consultancies, the more traditional ones that they've been working with, that they are probably forced to work with, but maybe don't want to, or need an alternate route, an uncommon way of solving those kind of challenges. So I think those are our 2 biggest objectives. One is expand what we do with one core audience, and penetrate, basically, be helpful to this newer group of audiences that may not know we do this.
Cool. With all these near-term plans, expansion plans, and these goals, we're at the part of the podcast where I get to ask you sort of our capstone question, which is, what's slowing you down?
Yeah. It's so funny because I guess I used to say time and space, and now these AI tools really do help you rethink not just the productivity, which is the least interesting part, but the ways in which to attack a problem. So I think what slows me down is my eagerness and curiosity in multiple areas I can access, but prioritization, like where to spend, I think, the energy. I think we know that from, as you start to use like AI tools, you're supposed to look through use cases and you prioritize them. We do that for clients. We help you think through it. I'm doing that with our own organization. Like, how do I, there's so many candy balls, right? So where's the most useful and beneficial one, not just shiniest object? So I think what slows me down is temptation. There you go. Is temptation, is that everything looks really good, but I need to do the evaluative nature of where to spend the energy, And I think a lot of organizations are starting to go through that. They're starting to see the almost disappointment or frustration that the payoff of these tools in the last year and a half, 2 years, may not be coming true the way they wanted it to, or they struggle to show it. So I think, yeah, temptation is my villain.
I think a lot of people can identify with that. I agree with you. I was recently promoted, and so I'm trying to figure out. Like I had the game plan with my last role. I'm like, I know exactly what to do, how to execute, where to spend my time, and then now in this new role, not that the game has changed. It's just I got to figure out where exactly I need to spend those resources. How do I maximize productivity while I'm working, so that way I'm bringing that value to the table. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and I think underneath that, maybe it's a second answer, is the difficulty unlearning. We have a lot of behaviors we've learned, and the way in which we do things may not be the way in which we should do them going forward. So how do you unlearn behaviors from a career of 10, 20, or 30 years when you need to maybe work differently or approach a problem differently? I think that's another good villain that might be related or different from that.
I think that's a theme of my week right now, Matt.
Really?
You're like speaking my language. Yeah, like honestly, like I'm like, all right, this isn't working. Let me tweak it. But then you get I'm such a creature of habit.
Yeah.
So it's hard to break that. I heard a joke last night that I'm a creature of habit, like a nun or something. Oh, that's a terrible joke, but I'm sorry, I had to throw it in there because I told my wife I would. All right, cool. Matt, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to following more with Profit and seeing how you guys and where you end up, because it's an exciting, and to find that you guys were the brains behind Uncarrier is so cool. Really
I'm
cool.
so lucky you brought that up.
Yeah.
And to know that you were an employee there on the you know more about it than I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?